The last night. This is my story and the story of my people. It's not a long story. Some men would tell it in the time it takes to drink a glass of bittersweet ferment. And then there are those who would tell it in such detail that barrels would be drained dry and they would not arrive at its end. I'm in between, too confused to be too short or too long. I was not always so. Once I was a man of opinion and will and purpose. Men turned to me for fixity when their hearts and minds wavered. Once. Today my crisis is time. I have just heard the whistle of the 9 o'clock train and know the sand is running out of my hourglass. What a beautiful sound the whistle of a train is. When I first heard it, I thought it the cry of the biggest bird in the universe. Then I saw the man-made beast and I heard it chatter and I heard it sing and I fell in love with its voice. These months passed. How often have I crept up the embankment and sat by the sharp stones, caressing the iron veins, placing the lobe of my ear on the hard smooth cool to hear the approaching throb of life from far away. I have been amazed at how indifferent men are to the beauty of a train's voice, how they will not even give pause to their conversation when its soaring whistle shrapnels the air. But this too I have learnt, that all beautiful things are not considered beautiful by all men. And perhaps one must be glad for that. How easily I digress, how much I have changed, how much become like these men I have come to live amongst, distracted and seduced by anything that may chance by, and perhaps one must be glad for that. Yet today my only two virtues must be focus and words. They must be like the nail and the hammer, banging away in ringing unison till there is no further to go. Today my crisis is time. In a few hours it will be midnight and the wafadars will begin to close in. Already they must be stirring, limbering their muscles with push-ups and chin-ups, testing their fists on unyielding walls, whetting their double-edged daggers on wet stone. Now they will be unrolling their goatskin belts to clean the sacred chaunch. Each of the 11 hardwood pins capable of perforating an artery with minimal fuss, emptying one of blood like a leaking cask. Soon they will shave their scalps till they glisten like the underside of a freshly stripped bark, and then each will oil his skin till it shines like a duck's wing and slips like water. When the exertions are done, they will sit in a tight circle, 3, 4, 5, never have more been sent, and they will each quaff or dram or ferment and clasp hands on either side and close their eyes, united deeply in their purity and in their purpose. In that moment of coiled stillness, they will know that nothing they pursue will ever elude them or the fatal insertion of the hallowed chaunch. Life must be made to ebb away slowly, giving one a chance to repent. It is the gift of men, different from the oblivion of animals. Death by the chaunch is a courtesy of one man to another. All this I know, as one knows the lines on one's toiling palms. I know the wafadars will find me. I know they will show me no mercy, for mercy is flab. Each of them can, without assistance, undo 15 men. And tonight there may be 5 of them. And me, for all purposes, there is just one of me. I know I will not see another dawn, and if my luck is fully run, never hear the whistle of another train. There is one that arrives from the capital at 2 in the night, but between midnight and 2 lie 2 long hours. The wafadars need less than a minute. If there are 5 of them, the cask will leak like a ripped sieve. And yet I feel no fear. Once I felt it and I inspired it. Fear was the paper on which every day of my life was written. Though I did not see it, just as one does not see the tree that has become the page under one's scanning eye. At the time, I thought my life was bliss. Each time I imagined the unblinking eye of the true one, I was swept with gratitude for the grace and purpose that had been granted unto me, unto us. Now I know better.
In many of your interviews already, Tarun, you've said that in many ways this is perhaps the most important book you've written, for yourself personally. Why do you say that, and can you tell us a little what the book is about?
Well, largely because of its themes. Its themes are in some sense a distillate of my professional life, and my personal life has been really tied up with my professional life in any case. It's a distillate of all the big themes that I feel are beginning to roil the world today. And fundamentally, the attempt has been to try and dissect the pathology of what happens to groups of human beings when they pursue the idea of purity, they pursue the idea of an ideology, they pursue the idea of one kind of world as versus other kinds of world. Yeah. And of course, I mean, as in any examination, it's not scientific, so it's not black or white. It's full of all kinds of complex nuances. And the writing of the book, in a sense, helped me see many of these nuances for myself and to play them out. I just feel that it is linguistically and culturally far less challenging than my earlier two novels. It's far more universal in that sense in its themes. But I think intellectually it's probably a more challenging book. I just think it's something most curious, engaged readers and citizens need to confront, the questions it tries to deal with. Yeah. And so for me, given my journalistic life, given my public engagements, given the country I come from, which is today in the midst of an incredible roil, I think these questions are really important. Yeah.
Just going from the excerpt that you read, there is a sense that the narrator has come from another place and newly arrived in the business of men. Can you give us a sense, what is the landscape of the book and where is the narrator from?
Well, in a sense, it's an allegory. It's set in an unnamed valley in the Himalayas. The challenge very often in tackling big questions in literary fiction is entry points, is frameworks, is perspective. So to address these questions beyond the banalities of everyday discourse, because these are also questions these are seed questions of life, of humanity more than life, that are addressed in a sense every day by newspapers, television channels, magazines, in conversations. To take them beyond the obvious banalities, you have to create some kind of a distancing device. The narrative device of creating a hermetically sealed world from which an exile arrives in the world we inhabit and begins to see the world, his own world and our world, in a fresh way. I think that trick of double distancing, one is he leaves the place, the hermetically sealed place he has lived in, so he acquires a kind of a distance to read that world, and he arrives in a world that he doesn't know, so he has a distance to read this world. And that allows, as a writer, it allows me to talk up both these worlds and the triumphs and failings in a complex way.
Again, just sticking with the excerpt that you've just read, there is a sense of impending doom and a sense of growing dread in the narrator's voice, a sense that something fatal is going to come upon him. And there's the talk of the Wafadars, who sound very exciting. So can you give us some sense of who they are and why is there this doom awaiting the narrator?
Well, I mean, clearly, I mean, as the opening pages which I read set it up, the narrator is probably at the end of his life. He apprehends the end of his life and he wants to tell his story. And his story, I hope, is compelling enough for readers to want to know and enter. The Wafadars are just very charismatic, magnetic characters, a genre of characters within the place he comes from. And I think readers will have to read the book to understand what a Wafadar is. And the narrator himself is a former Wafadar. He's a warrior, a kind of warrior of the pure. And in a sense, as I said to you earlier, the book is an examination of the pathologies of purity, of ideas, of dogma, of ideology, of the hunt for the perfect, I mean, and the distensions that it can often result in. But as I said, it's not black or white, it's problematic. It examines the fact that even ideas that are seeded in great beauty, in great purpose, in great truth and purity, can end up becoming something else. And the history of the modern world, if not the history of man himself, has this recurrent motive of beautiful ideas running aground. For me, as a journalist, as a novelist, it's a really core theme that I grapple with, which I try to understand, because I understand the beauty of idealism. I'm charmed and magnetized by the beauty of idealism, but I'm also terrified and despondent by what its final yields are. The seed that you plant and the fruit that you reap there seems to be some crazy process by which that synapse breaks down, and the book is in a sense an examination of that complex process.
I've read the book and I would really urge all of you to do so. We won't go further into it because that will spoil the pleasure of your reading. But just from this conversation, there is a sense that it has a deep sort of intellectual content and scape. But what I do want to emphasize is that it's also a very speedy read. It's a very plot-driven book, and you can't really put it down. And so there is the surface pleasure of that as well, even while one is brought to face with all the bigger questions that Tarun tackles with. So thanks for listening in.